Hello, everyone. I'm Aymeric Blo with Justina Petke from University College London, and I will present you a paper comparing genetic programming approaches for non-functional genetic improvement. So genetic improvement is quite a recent research field. We deal with automatic properties from software. It can deal with either functional properties with, for example, program repair, bug fixing, feature translation, but also, or more interestingly, in non-functional properties. For example, improving the running time or the memory or energy consumption of the software. In practice, GI needs to start from an existing software, and then it will start to generate and accumulate sequence of small modifications or edits, which can be, for example, deletion, replacement, or insertion of genetic material, which can in turn target either, for example, lines of code in the software, statement in an abstract syntax tree, or in general, any kind of data from the original software. However, one thing about non-functional GI is that most of the previous work so far has been success stories. Previous works selected one software, one application, one context, applied GI, found very great improvement, and discussed this improvement. But the focus has always been on the software itself, on the final improvement, and not the evolutionary process. Many of the previous work fine-tunes their GI approach to the application and basically only reports positive results. Our motivation in this work is to switch the focus from the software itself to the evolutionary process. So to do that, we use previous GI scenarios from a previous paper, on which we will optimize SAT solver, which is well known and called Minisat. We will target running time, and more precisely as a proxy, the number of CPU instructions executed by Minisat. We will compare 8 slightly different GP approaches to a baseline of 4 random bayes approaches. And finally, we will use experimental protocol based on k-fold cross-validation instead of simply running GI once. We will focus on 4 key research questions. First, effectiveness. So we will run our GP approach many times. How often do they yield improvement? Efficiency. How good can their improvement be? Robustness. So because we will be comparing 8 slightly different GP approaches, how sensible GP is to the setting of this parameter. And finally, consistency. We will try to see how much the training data impact the performance of GP. So experimental protocol for GI can be done with up to 3 steps. So the first and main step is training, in which we actually use the search process, so ERN GP, basically until budget exhaustion. And the goal is to generate and find new improved software variants. The last step, test, is basically to take the final software variant generating during training and see if it still works on new instances. The intermediary step, validation, can be done additionally in order to try to avoid overfitting on the training data. So training will yield a sequence of modifications. The idea with validation is to filter out the mutations that seems harmful in order to both simplify the final software and make it more understandable. So some issues in some previous work can include, for example, reporting a single GI run. So they took a software, applied GI, and report on the modification, but they only run it once or report a single run. Because they focus on the software itself, on the find modifications that do not always report all intermediary results. Sometimes training data can be reused in either or both validation and test steps. If they report a single GI run, then the split of data between training data, validation, and test is only done once. And sometimes data in the different steps is use different type of data. In contrast, we will be using k-fold cross-validation, we will report k GI runs for each of the different approach. We will use completely disjoint data on the 3 steps, and the cross-validation will ensure that we will use the same data for all the steps. So generalization will be sound. So I will just explain an example of our experimental protocol with k equals 5. So first, you need to take all your data, your entire data set, you shuffle it, and then you separate it into k disjoint subset or folds. So here our subsets are named A, B, C, D, and E, and we will label them in k different ways for test, validation, and training. So first, for test, we'll pick one single fold, and we'll sequentially use every fold. That will ensure that every instance of our dataset will be used exactly once during test. Then, for validation, we will pick similarly a single fold, and we'll pick it uniformly at random within the remaining fold. Finally, training simply use all the k minus 2 remaining fold. So we'll compare 3 types of GI approaches. First, random search as baseline, then GP and GP with elitism. For random search, we'll generate sequence up to a single, 2, 5, and 10 mutations. And this sequence will be generated independently and uniformly at random. So round 1 will simply generate single mutations, so solution very close to the original software, whereas random 10 will be able to generate much more complex software. For GP, we use a population of fixed size, which with n from 10 to 100. So 10 and 100 can seem really small for GP, but there are 2 values that have been used in previous work. And the whole GP approach that we use has been directly taken from previous work. For initialization, we will generate software that have been obtained with a single random mutation. And for the offspring, half of them will be generating through crossover, and half of them through mutation. For GPE, which is basically GP with elitism, we will add elitism steps that I will describe in the next slide. And basically, we will forward the best 10% of the population, and then again, the remaining half for crossover and mutation. So the main loop of genetic ramming for GI is as described there. First, for selection, we'll select all individuals, filter invalid ones, and then sort all valid individuals by fitness. For elitism, so only for GPE, we will take the best PE, or 10% individual, and simply add them to the offspring, as offspring. For crossover, we will select the best 50% or 45% of the individual, then select one single random valid parent, apply 1 point crossover on the sequence of edit, and generate a single offspring, so that we have the same percentage of parent and offspring generating by crossover. Similarly, for mutation, we select the best, again, PM individuals, and for each of them, append a new random mutation at the end of the edit sequence. Finally, if there is not enough offspring, so for example, if there are invalid individuals during selection, then we just regrow on a new individual of size 1 until the population is filled. So one interesting thing for applying GP to GI is that we use a very small number of instances because fitness evaluation is really expensive. The idea is that by using a very small number of instances, the fitness is less reliable, but if after every generation we update the fitness function to use new instances, then the genetic material that has survived many generations will have seen many different instances. So that's one specific of GP for GI. For the validation step, we use a 2-pass procedure. The first pass is actually new, And basically, we'll try to reduce the size of the edit sequence. So what we will do is consider every independent edit and remove it if it has no impact on the final software. So if the genotype from the genotype, which is the sequence of edit, we'll remove edits as long as they do not impact the phenotype, so the source code itself. The idea is to significantly reduce the size of the sequence and shorten the second pass. Second pass is taken from previous work. We'll take the edit sequence, evaluate every edit independently, sort the edit by fitness, take the best one, and try to sequentially re-add all of them while keeping only edits when they improve the resulting fitness. So for our experimental setup, we consider Minisat, which was a No1 winning SAT solver 10 years ago, but it's still relevant today because it was designed to be extremely simple, modular, and extensible. So it's still used today to test new ideas. There are two versions of Minisat that have been used in previous work. We'll use the latest one. And we will focus on a single file that contains all the search-related code. And that file has an abstract standard trees of 428 nodes. We'll compare 12 search processes, so 4 random for the baseline, 4 for GP, 4 for GP with elitism, and we'll use 130 SAT instances, again from previous work. So training, for the training budget, we use 10,000 SAT instances, for which the random approaches use in average 2 hours. On the GP approaches use 10 hours. The reason for that is, as you can see on the graph on the left, many of the generated software in the random approaches simply does not compile. So that 72% of them that does not cross that single barrier. In contrast, for GP, 80% of the generated software compile, run without error, run within the designated time, and output the correct satisfiability answer. On the right, you can see the empirical cumulative distributive function of the fitness for the successful mutant. And you can see in red, so that for the random approaches, there are only something like 15 or 20% of the successful mutants that are faster than the original software, whereas most of the mutants are neutral or have the exact same fitness as the original, whereas for GP, up to 70% of the successful mutants are actually faster than the original Minisat. Now we will describe two sets of tables for the experimental results. So these are the first results we obtain. So I'm using the first fold as test. As you can see on the first column, these are the training results. And you can see for one of the GP approach, then it seems we have a software which only uses 33% of the number of CPU instructions of the original software. So that means which is 3 times faster. On the second column, you can see the fitness of the training mutant on the validation step, on the validation fold. And it's slightly slower. But after the validation step, at the end of the validation step, most of the fitness have been reduced to below 100%. Finally, the latest column takes the validated software and run it on the test fold. And we can see again, very, very nice results. So the best one is, for example, 62.8%, so an improvement of 37% of the fitness, which is really good. If you run GI like that, then you obtain very nice results, and you could stop there. However, when we looked at other possible results. So using the same approaches with the same software on not exactly the same instance or a different distribution, you can see again that training is extremely efficient. So one of the GP approaches is almost 5 times faster than the original. On the validation, it's still very good, and it completely fails on the test fault. So two different ways of using your instances with yield completely different results. So overall, for the result, what we obtain is that GP as a search process is obviously much more successful than random search, but we did not really see very much sensitivity in the parameters. So every time, for every set of instances, all 8 GP approaches behave similarly. And the one thing that we noticed is it can lead to very large overfits. So the validation step is really essential. What we've seen from our repeated experiments is that the results were very variable, and that can be explained by an highly heterogeneous dataset. So some of our set instances were really hard, whereas some were really easy. And depending where you put them, during either training, validation, and test, you obtain very, very different results. Even so, we try to control for that. So as for our research questions, for effectiveness, we will report improvement for more than 5%. During training, almost all approaches, so including both GP and random approaches, were found very good improvement, which is basically overfit. After either validation and test, so on unseen instances, half of the times we get improvement better than 5%. But for improvement on both unseen instance from the validation subset and the test subset, only 5 of the 4C GP approaches and 220 random approaches yield more than 5% improvement. About efficiency, the best mutated software that you obtained run 64% faster on some instance fold, and 2/3 of the improvement were greater than 25% on either the validation or test fold, which is really good. However, for both robustness and inconsistency, results were inconclusive, either due to the dataset or as highlighted by our repeated experimental protocol. In conclusion, what we did is that we took an existing GI scenarios and tried to reproduce it, but with a much more rigorous experimental protocol. We obtained very, very consistent results for fixed data, but these results were inconsistent when we tried to control on which instance were used for training, validation, and test. However, in all the cases, we still obtain very good mutant. What we learn is that GI is much more complex than we can assume reading the previous work. There are many potential hidden flaws that can be easily revealed. So for example, using repeated experiments on cross-fault validation, that controlling data is really essential, but there is a very large potential to find better approaches and to improve GI in general. Finally, if there is one thing to take from this presentation, that if you didn't already know GI exists and GI works, so that's very good. But the one thing is we can make it work better. We have a lot of work that are basically success stories that show what GI can do. What we need to do is some kind of standardization with, for example, benchmark and comparative studies to really see what GI will do and to improve that. And this work is only the first step towards that direction. And that's it for me. So thank you for everyone that listens. If you have any question, I will be very happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you very much, Emeric. Here is Eric. Thank you again for the talk. We have a couple of questions, 3 actually. The first one is from Kehind. He thanks for the presentation, he or she thanks for the presentation, and asks, please, what exact mutation and crossover operators did you use to vary the software? Maybe I missed it in the presentation. Can you repeat again the operators?
Okay, so solution representation is a list of mutations, a list of edits, and edit is either a deletion, replacement, or insertion. For crossover, we have 2 parents, so 2 lists of edits, and we apply 1 point crossover, so then we split both sequences into 2. We take the head of one of them, the tail of the other. We combine them to obtain 1 single parent, 1 single offspring. For mutation, we start from the parent, which is a list of edits, and we append at the end of the sequence 1 new uniformly random taken edit.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a second question from Conor Ryan. He says, interesting work, thanks for the presentation. And he asks, on slide 9, you say that there might be not enough individuals. How can this happen? And have you looked at any other approaches to generate individuals? So slide 9, this slide, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we start from a population of n individual. Then with, for example, I will just consider GP, so only crossover mutation. We select 50% from the individual for crossover, 50% for mutation. So n divided by 2 and n divided by 2. But there might not be enough valid parents. For example, it might happen that all the parents from the previous population are invalid, in which case there is nothing to generate through crossover and mutation. And that's the reason we added the elitism step. So crossover select PC parent and generate PC children, and the same for mutation. But if there is not enough valid parents to begin with, then we do not generate enough offspring. We do not really consider different approaches to generate children, but yeah, we could, for example, generate new individual of size more than 1, or yeah, what we tried in this work was to see in the previous population to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you. Also, the question poser says thanks. Final question, at least for now, from Douglas Dice. Which other algorithms different than genetic programming are you considering to investigate in the future? So this is a question about your future work.
Oh, so since we submitted this paper, we started doing already the future works on what we consider was different local search. So simply for a simple downward local search or best improvement local search and taboo search we considered. So basically a comparison between GP and local search.
Okay, thank you. We have another question by Oliver Krauss. It's a sort of meta question concerning the success stories. So he says, isn't that just because nobody reports their failures? So this is probably a question which is much more general to every kind of research. Did you find anything that reports failed attempts? Up to you.
I don't think so, no. Which is kind of the point if you want to publish a paper to show what GI can do, you report the good thing you found, which can be a problem. For example, we can see in the 2 table of results, we can take one software, apply GI on its work, so we can report the results. Take another software and repeat many times with the same random split, and it might not work just because of the data. So some preview work may have hidden flaws so that the positive results are partly due to the data, but it is possible that many work have done preliminary experiments and simply discarded results when GI could find good results. So yeah, it's really interesting to publish both types of data, both positive and both negative, especially when you can see with all the results that if you did not look at the intermediate results, you could have completely missed that, yes, it can generalize to some unseen data. It was badly distributed between the two folds.